Your nervous system weighs emotional relief more than chronic discomfort. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com. Tell me if this scenario feels familiar. You're well aware of long-established patterns in your relationship. You've been getting clarity, maybe over the past weeks, months, maybe years. You've looked honestly at your marriage or your relationship and thought, I can't keep living like this. I'm noticing very specific patterns that are happening. You're feeling grounded. Maybe you've noticed that if I don't initiate sex, I will never be approached. I will never be wanted. I will never be desired. You're noticing that. You're beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, this relationship may not work. And then one night, you and your wife, you go to dinner. You have a few drinks. Kids are off at the friend's house spending the night. You got a little bit of liquid courage. You initiate sex, and you and your wife have some of the best sex you guys have had in years. And the next morning, you're thinking, oh, maybe this will work. Maybe I can turn this around. Maybe we're turning a corner. Not 24 hours later, you see you guys are back in the same narrative that you were before. Nothing about your long-term pattern changed, but your nervous system did. Because that moment, that single moment of sex can be powerful and override weeks, months, years of clarity. On our month-long series of the nervous system, I want to talk about why that happens. Because this is so frustrating. A lot of the guys that I talk to, they have come to realize what the truth looks like. Radical acceptance. Then something happens and it pulls them back in. It's not that you're weak. That's the comment that I saw. I'm like, oh, I'm so weak. And it's not being gullible. It's your nervous system doing exactly what it was evolved to do. Bring you back to safety. Immediate safety signals are not the same as long-term patterns. I always think about this as like a computer. Think about how a computer works. You have your long-term memory, your hard drive. That has data stored in there from a long period of time. If you think about your nervous system sort of like a computer, you have all of this stored information, stored data. We talked about this earlier in this podcast series about how all of these feelings are stored in the body, especially from childhood wounds. You have your hard drive. And then you have, if you're familiar with how a computer works, when you're working on it in the moment doing a task, that is in short-term memory. That is in your RAM memory. So that is kind of like what the computer is doing, processing in the moment. And it's having to pull data and manipulate data from external inputs, what you type in, whatever. Your nervous system is very similar to that. Your nervous system has all of this long-term information, but it's living in the present. It's living in the here and now. And so your thinking brain understands, from a long-term perspective, it understands patterns. It understands relationship history. It understands behavior trends. It understands what reality is. Your nervous system does not. Your nervous system is just working with what is happening in that moment. That's why sex can be so powerful, because your nervous system is just asking one question, right now, am I safe? When you experience closeness, because you have experienced closeness to equate to safety, so touch, warmth, your nervous system releases that powerful chemistry of neurochemicals. You have the dopamine rewarding you, and then you throw in other things like oxytocin that facilitates bonding, and other endorphins and serotonin and all these neurochemicals, that biochemical wave just, and your body says, threat resolved, connection restored. But what it doesn't do is say, let's objectively look at what the last 6 months have been like. That's why your nervous system is moment-driven and not pattern-driven. It reacts to the feelings you have in the moment, in the here and now, the felt now. And in that moment, safety feels real, even though the pattern completely says otherwise. And that's frustrating because it's in those moments where you feel like you've taken a step backwards in your progress. Your nervous system weighs emotional relief more than chronic discomfort because survival systems were evolved to prioritize immediate safety and immediate relief, not pattern recognition, not statistical truth. If tension's been building and then suddenly connection returns, your body experiences the drop in threat activation, and that drop can feel like hope, relief, maybe attachment repair. It's like emotional oxygen. It's emotional nourishment if you've been starving. And so your nervous system interprets that relief as resolution. But the relief is not the same as legitimate change. It's just that momentary shift in your state of being. Again, this is all felt, somatic. It's not a pattern shift. That's where men confuse the nervous system high with relationship change or progress. And this is so hard, especially if you lean anxious, preoccupied, because that moment of connection feels like proof that we're okay again. Your system can quiet down. That fear of abandonment comes down. You're flooded with all those neurochemicals. Your brain starts rewiring the story that, oh, we're okay. That was just a rough patch. We're better. And especially if you're a fearful avoidant, because you're going to have that emotional whiplash where you went from this relationship is broken to, oh, this is what I've been trying to get. This is what I've been waiting for the whole time. Your nervous system is just all over the place. It's reacting to a current state and not stability. And all attachment styles are vulnerable to moment-driven reframing, even the dismissive. It's just different ways. When conflict or disconnection happens, your nervous system is in that threat mode. Talked about that in the last podcast with communicating your needs. If we go back and look at when conflict or disconnection happens, and your nervous system is in threat mode, your brain is tracking danger, your brain is tracking this isn't safe, something's wrong. Then when that connection returns and your body experiences that neurochemical reset, it's flooding the system and everything relaxes. Your body says, oh, safety's restored, but it doesn't know frequency and patterns and consistency. It's that immediate regulation. That's why one good night of sex can be so disproportionately powerful. It literally changes your internal chemistry. So the first step is awareness. The first step of the Secure Husband process is always to just notice. Notice what happens with the narrative after a connection moment. Notice how your subconscious starts editing that long-term memory, not maliciously, but protectively. Just notice how it starts to minimize the disconnection, starts to minimize the chronic patterns and minimize past conflict, and how it's amplifying the relief and closeness and bonding. So you just notice, bring awareness to it. Notice when your nervous system shifts into connection mode, connection chemistry. Notice how your perception shifts with that, because your physiology's changed. That's why the clarity disappears after emotional reconnection. So just be mindful. Notice that the relationship, if the relationship has been painful and you're starving, your nervous system's going to prioritize that attachment continuity. Because remember, historically, connection meant survival. You associated connection with safety. So when relief appears, your system grabs it and it holds onto it hard. So it's being mindful. And then you take intentional action. What am I going to do in these moments? I'm going to just notice this moment feels good, but the pattern still is what matters. And that's how you start to interrupt that surge. Just pause. Ask yourself afterwards, is this a moment or evidence of a new pattern? It's just happened one time. Has it happened many times? Then it's not a pattern. You don't look at it emotionally. You have to step away, and this is not easy to do. It takes a lot of practice. It takes being able to sit in your emotions, sit in the discomfort, breathe through them, work through them, and be able to look at things factually. The next day, has behavior changed consistently? Is communication different? If there's effort, is it sustained? And some of this will take a few days, maybe after the connection moment. You're not invalidating the moment. You're just contextualizing it. And that protects the clarity. It gives you the ability to regulate and not reframe, because your nervous system is temporarily biased toward hope, because that's what you've been craving for so long. It was part of that survival. It was part of that inner boy inside who just wanted to be seen and loved and heard and understood, especially if you never got finality from your childhood. So your nervous system is always going to be pushing towards hope. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's human nature. But sometimes major decisions in your life, they can't be made in those flooded moments, whether it's fear or reconnection. So here's what you need to do. You notice, you regulate, and then you decide. It's the regulating that's going to let your nervous system return to baseline. Let all those neurochemicals pass through you. It may take a few days. Then go back, evaluate the pattern, not the moment, and just bring awareness to it. What happens if it's just a one-off night? Well, we had a few drinks and we had sex, and then nothing else happened. That gives you the clarity again. It didn't change the pattern. So what happens if after that night, she starts initiating more every few days? Well, now you're creating a new pattern. Now you can look at that objectively and say, I see a pattern starting. Let's see where this goes. It's about evaluating the pattern, not the moment. When that moment hits, you can say, oh, this feels good. My nervous system is calming. This is a moment, but it's not a change in the situation. You honor that experience, but you don't surrender your clarity. And as always, I say this out of love. I've been there. You are not weak. You're human. Your nervous system is wired to chase hope and relief and protect attachment. You don't have to ignore the moment. Just place the moment inside the pattern. And when you can learn to regulate your nervous system, to hold both, to breathe through all of this, to process it, to sit in the discomfort and come out the other side regulated, and you stop letting the brain chemistry affect those life decisions. You let awareness lead, and so it doesn't hijack your clarity. Nervous system regulation is so important in a marriage. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in this podcast series all month on the nervous system and how it affects your marriage. I hope this podcast was helpful for you. If you're a new listener, would you hit the subscribe button? If you know somebody who may need to hear this, share this episode with somebody. And if you're a regular listener, I love looking at the analytics because there are so many regular listeners week after week. I encourage you, would you write a review? If you like to listen every week, that helps other men find this, and it helps the algorithms spread this healing process with other men. And if you need help in your marriage, some accountability, I encourage you visit securehusband.com, fill out the form for a free 30-minute consultation, just a conversation to see if one-on-one coaching might be beneficial for you. And I'll see you on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.